This is Ryza, my cadet I designed for Chroma Core 2025, a demon rocker with the mission to burn the world. Hi, I'm Mystics, a freelance character concept artist, and today I want to teach you what I believe to be engaging character design. Stick around to the end as I brought in some amazing character designers to share their insights and advice on what makes an engaging design. First off, what is Chroma Core? Chroma Core is an annual art challenge created and hosted by Sinix, where you have to create a character design for a fictional bootcamp to enlist. Your submission will determine if you get into the bootcamp, where you have to fight against other artists for 30 days. I strongly encourage joining Chroma Core. Artists from around the world gather and join together to make an unforgettable community experience. I've met many great friends from participating, and it's an amazing opportunity to improve your art. While I haven't made it in as a cadet this year, I made it into standouts 3 years in a row. This video is more about an aspect of character design that I think is often overlooked. There are many great videos about character design, but they often fall and blend into the same category: fundamentals, shape design, silhouettes, big, medium, and small, and so forth. But this video is not about those. Stronger fundamentals give you a wider playroom for good design, but it is not what makes a design engaging. At least not to me. I have seen many cases of fundamentally sound characters that are just kind of boring. We have all worked on designs before that had great ideas attached to them. Ideas we dream about or find cool. But do you ever design the character just to look at it and find it boring? Uninspired? Like something is off?
What the hell is this?
Breaking down boring or bad design is incredibly difficult, so let's look at some examples. I believe gacha games too often fall into the trap of having bad design. But why? Characters in gacha are designed to be appealing. They are designed to be sexy and desirable for the average viewer. And often they do their job and succeed, essentially making them a successful design. But I think they often fall into the same pitfall of over-design. But that does not mean all gacha games have bad designs. Some have fantastic designs, in fact. Here are some of my favorites. Let's talk about Genshin Impact, because it represents a growing issue in character design, and I believe Genshin to be the biggest offender of this. Their characters are often so detailed that, well, they are hard to look at. The detail added to a character doesn't tell a story of who they are, so it often turns into visual noise. It is clear they are added to look shiny, which for the average consumer means more detail is more desire. Overwatch is often trumped to have amazing characters. It is often used as a main example of strong silhouettes, strong characters, and strong personalities. It makes sense. The game is a hero shooter, and the characters are the most important aspect. Wuyang is a new character coming to Overwatch, and I believe him to be one of the weaker designs the game has to offer. Wuyang is fundamentally sound. Nothing about him is bad, but nothing about him is exceptional, or unique, or really feels like he has anything to say. And that is one of my biggest criticisms. A character can be fundamentally sound, but they can be just as boring. Looking at him, could you tell me what role he fulfills in the game? How he uses his abilities, or what he does? Apparently, he is a support, but it's hard to tell what he's supposed to do in the game. Nothing about him stands out as being bad. His silhouette is fine, the tech looks believable enough, and his outfit is alright. I cannot tell if the way he uses his abilities correlates to how he behaves. Would this character still work with a different outfit? A different context? Most Overwatch characters can hold their own even outside of the game, but most importantly, you can immediately tell how an Overwatch agent plays by just looking at them. Sure, he works fine for Overwatch, but he really doesn't do anything to stand out in a wide cast of heroes that do. There are many reasons why a design might be good. A strong silhouette, a powerful pose, and function that follows form. Fundamentals are absolutely important for reaching good design. Stronger skills give you a stronger playing ground for your ideas. But those are all fundamental factors. We already know that you need strong fundamentals. Good design has to be successful depending on what you are designing for. It's problem solving. Good designers need to be able to communicate their ideas clearly to their audience. The better you are at this, the more successful your design will be. So, what makes a design engaging? Soul. I believe the best designs start with a feeling, a shimmer, a flicker of who the character is and what they represent. Engaging design to me is about soul. If I can look at a character and immediately tell what their deal is, then that is an amazing design. If I can look at a character and their personality shines through every part of them, then I believe it to be successful. But there is more to engaging design than just soul, and not every character needs to be engaging. As a designer, it is your job to capture that soul and turn it into something real, and doing that is something even I struggle with. I know this all kinda sounds a little cryptic. Character design is impossibly difficult. Its challenge is that while you need soul, you also need fundamentals. But how do we get to a good design? How do we capture that essence every time? What is the difference between good and engaging design? Good and engaging often overlap, but they are not entirely the same. A good design has strong fundamentals, appealing shapes, confident silhouettes, good shape hierarchy, and technical clarity, as well as function. It has to be technically sound. Engaging design goes deeper. It's about personality, the spark, the hook, something so compelling you don't need extra context to be pulled in. It's also about taste, the shows you watch, the things you love, what excites you and what turns you off, what fashion you like and how you dress. Taste is powerful and incredibly hard to teach. But with that being said, the best characters often come from both good design and engaging design. Soul doesn't replace function, it informs it. When the personality drives the visual decision, both the good and the engaging come alive together. You don't need to be a fundamental guru to make a compelling character. So, how exactly do you achieve both? Let's look at one of my favorite character designers and break down their work. Ian Su is an amazing character concept artist working for Riot Games. I believe him to have a very good understanding of how to make a compelling character. Not only does he have great fundamentals, but also a unique sense of taste that you see in his art. He often tends to fuse graphic influences into his designs, and really understands how to use shape hierarchy and shape design to its fullest to not only make something that is functional, but also cool and engaging for the viewer. Design is all about how you think. Thinking is extremely important and not talked about enough. Every project you start should start off with questions. Who is your character? What is your character? Why do they exist? What is their purpose? When do they exist? Where do they exist? These are easy questions to start off, but these are questions you will always have to ask yourself every single time. When I mean thinking is a part of good design, it's about problem solving. Without asking yourself these questions, you cannot solve the problem which is your character. A concept is a problem, and our job as a designer is to communicate that to others in a way that is digestible, fun, and interesting. Ryza is a good example of this. She was born from a spark, a desire to make someone that is so undeniable. Her concept was grand and ambitious. a yokai demon rocker inspired by Japanese mythology, the One Yudo, a flaming wheelhead. The wheel had to be a core part of her character. It spins while she performs and grows with the influence, but more importantly, it's a flaming wheel. Her entire deal is that she leads a militaristic force in hell, and that whenever she goes on tour, she wages war. She loves music and is in it for the love of the game. Ryza is her persona on stage, and is someone that is undeniable and desirable. Despite bringing war, her show is literally to die for. It's easy to see how that is a front-loaded idea. Naturally with that, the question is, what does she absolutely need to have? How do we make this work? She needs to have a flaming wheel. She's a demon, so demonic aspects. She has to have a guitar because she's a rocker. She is flamboyant and charismatic and needs to stand out. She fights and wages war, and it needs to be punk rock as hell. So now we have a checklist of things we absolutely have to include for her to even be an idea, but it all seems a little much. So how do we actually turn this into a character? Here is a checklist and a process of what I believe to be absolutely vital for designing characters. Let's talk about references and research. The undisputed king, and arguably, if not the most important part of concept art as a whole. The same rings true for character design. Whatever your character is about, do your research. Designing an intergalactic cowboy? Look into cowboys, their history, and how they dress. Read a book or watch a movie. Get inspired. Intergalactic? Look into sci-fi and what inspires you, and start researching about that genre. Ryza was inspired by the yokai One Yudo, so research there was absolutely needed. But she was also inspired by punk fashion movements in Japan. Next to that, I also use inspiration of many more Western influences. The idea is that every tour, she gets to wear a new outfit, and for her tour to Chroma Core, she wants to have extra flair. Why Visual K for Ryza? Visual K is characterized by its flamboyant and androgynous aesthetic, and Visual K tends to stand out, which is why I chose it for the main jumping point of Ryza. Visual K often has crazy hair, crazy silhouettes, and has a blend of punk rock, metal, and gothic elements, but also a little bit of militaristic gothic elements too. I heavily recommend compiling your references in PureRef. PureRef is free and amazing for compiling your references. When using it, I usually have a way to go about compiling my references. For good references, you need an adequate split of references from life and art that inspires you. I like to separate costuming and clothing to its own section. Any other art influences or pieces that inspired me, or just feel like a vibe, also get their own section. Do not be afraid to be inspired by other artists. Props, weapons, and belts also get their own section. After that, I also like to find additional and more historic references of what I'm referencing. How do we properly use references? I like to think of references as a jumping off point. Analyze them and think of how you can take this and turn it into something crazy to fit the character. It's important to try and not outright copy a reference. It can often feel unoriginal. Intent is your biggest friend here. I dislike silhouette ideating. It's hard to get the feeling of a character, and it often relies on silhouette fundamentals to tell your story, which isn't bad, but can often turn uninspired and like you're just reshuffling elements. It's a great starting point for beginners, but I personally dislike using this process nowadays, as for them to work, you need to think of other things like anatomy, posing, much more. I start with the shitty sketch, which is literally just a rough sketch of the ideas that I do have. The quickest way to get what I'm feeling out into the world, while still sort of resembling a character. These are, well, shitty by nature, but they really do the job. For Ryza, my shitty sketches turned out to be very successful, and I liked the first one so much, I was absolutely sure this was who she was going to be, and exploring other ideas was going to be good, but I knew I would return back to this one. Shitty sketch for me is all about soul. Even in its roughest form of sketch, they should still be able to tell what your design is about and who this character is, even if you're approaching each ideation with a different idea. I tend to leave my character descriptions or ideas sort of vague. What do I mean by this? I purposefully only have an overall description of my character and who they are. That includes their pitch, their genre, their idea, and their race and ethnicity. Other than that, I believe any additional details to hold you back. Having a super detailed description is what you get from clients, but in my eyes, with ideations, you get to flex your muscle and explore many ideas that sometimes you don't think of in the moment, and being overly restricting can take that away from you. Usually, I do not recommend sticking to one shitty sketch like I did for Ryza. Ideating is an important process. We use ideation to get our ideas out and to see what works and what doesn't. It's the purest form of problem solving, and it's what design is all about. I usually recommend aiming for a minimum of 3 ideations, but I like to do 4. But I really think you should do more if something's not clicking for you. Do as many as you think you'd like to do. When ideating for Ryza, the first shitty sketch just felt right. The flaming wheel, her attitude, the pose, the smile, the guitar, they were all feeling like this is what I wanted her to be. For the other 2 shitty sketch, I approached it differently, while still trying to keep the idea. Instead of a flaming wheel, what if her hair is flaming? What is her outfit that is a little more punk than rock? For the last shitty sketch, what if it's more traditionally based on Japanese outfits, but still having that flamboyant and punk personality? More focus on the axe and fusing the axe and the wheel together as an idea. It's important to say that these are all ideas worth exploring further, yet my vision for this design was so clear that I had to choose A. Not every character will have a vision as thorough and clear as Ryza. Let's talk about another one of my favorite techniques I like to do, the Frankenstein Process. The Handler was a character I worked on for a personal project. She is charismatic, witty, and nerdy. That is doubling in as an adventure. I'm not fond of how she turned out, but through making her, I learned a great deal, which is the Frankenstein process. Early on, when ideating, I had a clear idea, but I wasn't sure what I wanted the Handler to feel like yet. Early designs like A and B were easily the fan favorites, and while I enjoyed their vibe, something felt off. I particularly liked the vibe that D was giving with its attitude and pose, so I thought to myself, what if I start splicing and merging the aspects together of the designs that I do like and see what I get? Even if this isn't something you will go for with your character, it can show just how much of an impact costuming, posing, and attitude can give to your character. Oh, how we fear critique. To be judged, to be challenged. Yet, critique is extremely important, especially for design. Get out there, show your art to your friends, and ask them what they think of it. Design is about taste and can often feel very subjective because it is. There are fundamental factors of why design works better than the other, but what you like doesn't always have to correlate to it being fundamentally better. How to take critique and how to keep your autonomy is important. Critique is very important, but it's also important that you get to keep your voice and what you want out of this design. Ryza was a unique problem. She had too much going on at the same time. A flaming wheel, spiky demon horns, spiky hair, massive shoulder pads, and a demon guitar. It's easy to see how all of those are fighting for attention, yet at some point, that was kind of the point. She was supposed to be super out there and bold, but she herself has to stand out and has to carry presence even without the guitar or the wheel. It was clear this version was not working, so I had to cut it back. I refocused the demon guitar to a more generic take, an axe guitar with flames. Yet another problem arose, the wheel. Early on, I got critiqued that Ryza felt like she was a pirate. The problem being the wheel. The wheel brought many problems. The spherical endings made it look like a ship's wheel, which was absolutely not the goal. So I took time to ideate and work on how the wheel should look and how it would spin. The other problem was that the wheel and the axe were fighting for attention again. It was hard to balance because neither was more important than the other. The wheel was a core identity of who she is and what she represents, but pushing the wheel to be bigger made her feel weird, but pushing it to be much smaller also made it feel like it's insignificant. The same was with the guitar. Eventually, I settled with making the wheel smaller, but not by much, to balance out the silhouette. Through critique, I was able to reevaluate what was working and what wasn't, but also what I wanted to keep and what I didn't. It's important that receiving critique can be meaningful, but in the end, it's on you on how to find a middle ground. Critique is important, but it's also important that you get to keep your voice and what you want out of this design. In the end, I'm quite proud where Ryza landed. Her idea was out there, but through designing her, I learned what it means to properly balance all these concepts and how to make a design feel engaging. Even if my fundamentals aren't the strongest, Ryza is a testament of everything that I learned coming together to create something that is engaging. So I had a talk with 4 amazing artists and 4 amazing designers that I had the chance to interview, and they kind of are also giving their take on what they think is engaging design and just kind of tips for upcoming designers and for you guys. So yeah, make sure to watch. They are quite long, I had to edit them down, but I hope you enjoy.
Hi, my name is Naka, and I like to draw, and basically this is what I'm doing for the last decade. And I worked as an animator. I'm working currently as a freelancer, doing different commissions, from like designing album covers or doing illustrations for even comics. Yeah, there is actually a lot of things, like sometimes logo design, whatever comes in my way. Basically, as long as it's like 2D, I'm usually fairly comfortable doing those things. I'm like not necessarily excelling in anything, but like being super comfortable with almost everything, as long as it's like 2D hand-drawn and not requires vector graphics. I can do those too, but I just like hate doing them. So yeah, in general, I'm doing that, and also I have a YouTube channel that's it's currently have like 5 videos, like after almost a year. So I'm very slow with those things, but I kind of like love doing it, so I'm gonna keep doing that.
I love your art. Like, you have a lot of versatility, and I think it's great how you like manage to always stay in your voice. So yeah, thank you for joining me. So let's get into the first question. So what do you think, or what is good design for you?
Whenever I make a character design, or basically any design, my first thing is trying to figure out what is the purpose of that specific design, because it needs to serve a purpose. Like, we are, especially if it's for a commission or any type of work, there is a client who wants to see something, and I ask around and try to figure out what the client actually wants, and I'm trying to create something that is as close to that as possible. And during that part of the thinking process, I'm not thinking about like how it would look like. It's just like, what is our goal? Once I figured out the goal, then comes the more experimental part, when it's like like on one side I'm exploring and experimenting with the whole concept. For example, let's say you want a character design that is a delivery guy. Generally, it's not an interesting topic. But when you start designing a character like that, you start thinking about like, okay, he is a delivery guy. What does he deliver? Let's go with pizza, for example. And now we can start thinking about like what life this person might have. And just based on that, we are not necessarily creating lore or just writing a light novel or anything like that. We are basically start to fill up a board of like different aspects of this character design. For example, if he's a delivery guy, this is probably not his final job. It might be something that he's maybe like collecting money for something, or like being poor. So I can use this type of logic to reinforce the concept of this specific character.
How would you define engaging design, or what do you think is engaging design?
For me, what is the most engaging thing? If I see a design and it is very aggressively purpose driven. So it's like all about its purpose. Like when you look at it, you immediately know, for example, in a character design, you immediately know like what's the personality of this character, what this person do, and just only by looking at just a one single picture of that character. If you can achieve that, that's, at least for me, it's a very engaging thing, because then I'm already know things about this person, and after that it's like my choice to actually engage with it or not, but it enables engagement. Engagement draws focus. That's definitely good if we are talking about a protagonist or like antagonist or like any important character, object, environment, anything. But for example, you can create like a very engaging design for something, but overdoing it. Like let's say you create like a very engaging design for a side character who is more important than the main character. That's a bad design.
So let's go for a more fun question, because we are kind of like going into that territory. So what do you like really dislike seeing in character designs?
You know what? I do have like one thing that I actually hate about like certain character designs, and it's a very common trait in anime, and it is something like visibly made purposefully to be cute. I just don't like that. Like when I see a character design that was designed to be like the purpose of this character of being cute, I just hate that concept, because like in general I just don't like the idea. It's like it's a weird way of like hey, this is a character and this character is angry. That's not a character. Like the same goes with cuteness. Like that's something that usually pisses me off in animes. But in general, like I think the most common like character design thing is just creating like a very one-sided, like very simple, like what's the term? It's like creating a very one-dimensional character design.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you know, your tsunderes and your like, that's like, or even if I just say cowboy. If I say cowboy, you immediately like think about a guy who is kind of cool, who is kind of a little bit like lazy maybe, moving slow, talking slow, drinking alcohol, smoking cigar, riding on a horseback, and it's not necessarily need to be like that. Like personally, I don't like character designs that doesn't explore at all.
Yeah.
Maybe like that's my biggest issue in general.
Okay, so we're nearing the end. Do you have any tips for like character design? Honestly, anything can also just be about design.
Probably everyone gave like very great tips and like general advices, so I'm just gonna go with like a very simple one. If you create a character design, don't just draw like a naked person and start putting clothes on it. Just don't do that, because then basically you're already strict by a shape of a specific human, you're already restricted by the pose, so you just only focus on like how these clothes look like for this specific angle. It sounds like very conventional at first glance. If like it's just like I create like one person in T-pose and just like start putting like clothes on it. Even like professionals in AAA does that, and it's like not necessarily a bad thing. But if you want to create like interesting designs, it's just do rough sketches, like different angles, try out like different facial expressions, because that might spark something.
Yeah, that's a great tip. All right, man. Thank you so much. That was really fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
This is Deovise, an amazing artist with a keen eye for composition, shape design, and honestly what I think to be really pretty muted palettes and colors. But I honestly also think he has a really great eye for design too. And this is what he has to say about what I'm talking about in the video. My first question would be, what do you think is engaging character design?
It's the X factor. It's the element of the characters that makes them special. It's the element of the character that separates them from their surroundings further. This is what, you have something as a detail that separates main character from surrounding NPCs. It's kind of like, when you enter a cutscene, you immediately know who is the main guy, type of situation. And it is achieved through these very intentional, separating details. Sometimes they can be maximally, sometimes they can be very minimal, sometimes they can be achieved, it can be achieved through contrast, in terms of the amount of detail, the kind of detail, the color, stuff like this. And I think that way, anything that feels like it could be a main character feels like an engaging design to me. That's how I put it. What I think makes a good design to me is specificity. Specificity comes from intent. Intent comes from story. If you have a story, it and I guess the established role for your design, you have intent. That means that you have limitations. Limitations create specificity. If you make an Asian coded design where it's just average kind of amalgamation of Orientalist ideas of what an Asian character would look like, you would just end up with racial stereotype number 32, and you wouldn't really care too much for this character. But if you go for a very specific nation, where you go for a very specific place, for a very specific location or region of this country or nation, suddenly the design becomes kind of easier to do because you kind of know what to do. You have you have all of the steps laid out in front of you, and at the same time it'll feel more separate from the rest, which makes for a more interesting design easily.
What do you think is the difference between good and engaging design?
I guess the difference between good design and engaging design tends to be with how much of a importance the design drives to itself. So you can make a design that, well, to me, good design is the one that, again, fulfills its intention, its purpose, its what it's meant to accomplish. And sometimes you need a design that is intentionally boring. And it still would be a good design. Like, for example, you can make a method that is functional, that's purely functional, and it makes sense for why it would be boring. I would struggle maybe to find a perfect example, but imagine some sort of imperialist type of sci-fi empire, which would not go for any flair. They would just do purely functional stuff, something that is very blocky, something that is very boring. Is the design engaging? Not really, because it goes for very boring aesthetics. But is it a good design? I'd say yes, because it accomplishes and represents the goals and the attitude of the people that build these designs,
What do you dislike seeing in character designs in general? Are there like any like tropes or just like ways certain people do something that you really dislike seeing?
I really dislike. I mean, there is a general term of it, right? It's useless flair. Basically, stuff that is there to distract your eye. It's there to fill an empty gap. Basically, like over-designed stuff or details that don't really get followed up through either within like this story or like, for example, I often bring up this one example of like a Concord design with that one tank lady. She has this blue lipstick which is there just kind of randomly. It's not really elaborated upon, and this lack of intention makes these seemingly unimportant part suddenly seem a lot more important than it actually is and will ever be. So I guess, yeah, just useless details that are there, and you don't need to have too many of them, but useless details that don't really add too much to the character, I think are pretty annoying to me.
Hey, this is Sinix, and I like design theory and art. Obviously, I'm a teacher. I do YouTube, but I'm also just a teacher at local art schools and colleges. We'll see. This is where we get tricky because for me, I am obsessed with objectivity. So like, I can't escape my need to understand scientifically, mathematically, like what makes a design good. So like, I find it so fulfilling if I'm like, oh, I like this and I can understand like this aspect of ratio and the silhouette, this aspect of ratio and value, and these like kind of quantifiable things like for me that like are almost like make it even better if I feel like everything's kind of lining up with some design theory I have in my head. But I mean, there is some aspect of, I guess, I also just enjoy a slightly more minimalist approach, which I think is a subjective thing to some extent. Although I'm still on the fence about that as well. But I like a little bit of, minimalist, hyper confident, stylized. I tend to love sci-fi stuff more than any, other type of genre. So that's would be where subjectivity would come into it more.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of agree with the minimalist thing. I do have like a section in my video where I'm like, I hate when people like do over design stuff, like just like crowding the character with just things they don't need, like gacha games, for example. But I mean, maybe that is subjective. Like, I think there's ways to make it cool.
I can tell you what the argument is for it not being subjective, and that is that if you think back on aesthetic theory, like what is all this stuff, ratios, big, medium, small, like it all has to do with creating a sense of trust and comfort between the artist and the viewer. And what helps create trust is a sense of reciprocation of that trust, and putting out a minimal amount of information and being like, you will understand what this is supposed to be, and this is the bare minimum. Like, I trust you to figure it out with just these clues, is a reason why I think it's more objective, because I think we like that feeling of being respected for just instead of doing hyper photorealistic super hyper detailed stuff, just being like, no, you can get it, you can figure out this design, these are enough, like these are the important shapes, these are the important movements, here's the detail area, here's the rest area, and just being as doing the most you can with the least amount. I think there is a objectivity toward the appeal of minimalism, but certainly some people's subjectivity toward just enjoying the rendering stuff, I think, will override that. But I would like to pretend I'm on the side of objectivity.
That comes to my next question. What do you think is engaging design?
See, engaging is another interesting word, because like technically engaging is like a subconscious trick of like what design theory is trying to do, like you kind of like a composition is an engagement that kind of keeps you centered around something rather than just letting your eyes slip off the thing. But engaging on like a more I guess less visual level, I don't know, for me, like, I think like all of these rules and design theory things, once again, if we just talk about them as like a portrayal of trust, you can get that trust, and this is why the rules that we talk about and are more just kind of suggestions, because they help if you don't have any idea of where to go. But you can bypass all of that if you can just display a level of confidence that almost overrides that, because these are all tricks to display a confidence when you personally maybe don't have that much confidence in what you're doing. You can just be like, okay, well, I know if this ratio is fine and this shape hierarchy is good and this level of rest and detail is good, like it will portray some semblance of trust with the viewer and confidence. But the exciting art, in a lot of ways, is the art that manages to create that feeling of confidence and trust without really caring about any of those normal signifiers, which is a very tricky thing to do, to like break every rule and still have people feel like, oh, this is fun, this is cool, this is exciting to look at. And that comes through, I think, in just a kind of a slight feeling in just when you look at the lines and shapes someone puts down, of just feeling a level of energy, where you can kind of tell what kind of speeds and tempos they were going with. Because I always feel like it's a rhythmic thing too. Like if you can kind of feel like a sense of rushing in parts and slowing down in parts, that will give you a feeling of trust and confidence too. But it can become so imperceptible in a kind of more analytical sense that it just becomes a feeling of like, oh, this just feels nice, this just feels good, and you just enjoy looking at it. And I would argue, much like they say that futuristic science is like technology at a far enough level just feels like magic to us. I would say to some aspect, I think we're talking about design theory ideas that are just so beyond our current understanding that they just feel like just like exciting and fun and engaging in a more subjective way. But then again, once again, I have that little philosophical itch to be like, maybe it is just a objective thing that we're not fully understanding quite yet, but work its way into making us like something. It's just trying to be like, why do I like this? So at the end of the day, you have to remember that simply liking something is far more powerful than like our understanding of why we like something, because we don't understand every aspect. We understand a lot, and it improves every year, our understanding of design theory. But at the end of it, if you like something, that's undeniable. That's a thing you have to just be stubborn about. That's a thing you have to just commit to, even if it seems to not line up with any of the knowledge we currently have. You just got to trust that, as art being something that's trying to understand what's inside of us, you just got to go with your gut on a lot of things.
The next question, I think it is an interesting one. So we established good design and engaging design, or in like the bounds of what we were talking about. So what do you think is like the difference between them? Would you say there's like a difference?
Well, for me, no, not too much, but I do think, once again, there's a little bit of a little gap in knowledge that has to be acknowledged in all things. We don't know everything. We're just simple creatures. So there is a gap that we don't understand. So there's, a little bit of wiggle room in there. But for me, I'm pretty invested in the idea that there's a objective kind of truth to a lot of it. Aside from, just like the subjectivity that comes from everyone having their own experienced visual library. When you were younger, you might associate a certain house with like, that's your home, that's what makes you feel comfortable. You might experience a certain car, like my parents had this old truck or something, and you'll be like, oh, okay, like my dad had one of those old Nissan Z's, like the little kind of sporty racing looking cars. So in my brain, there's a kind of retro look to certain cars that I just find to be like comforting or appealing in some way. And there's aspects of how we've placed our visual library into different emotions that does become a subjective amount of how we approach things and look at things. So I do think it's mostly just the experiences of our life that kind of affect minor levels of subjective, what we find to be enjoyable or appealing, but all under that big old framework, because these are like emotional reactions, subjective emotional reactions that don't translate across people. You show the same house To a different person, they don't care. It's just a weird house. It's a foreign house. It's a strange house. To you, it's your home. It's, everything. So I think that's like where the subjective, aspect of art really comes from, the emotional side of it. But the visual side of it has I think a more objective truth about it.
What do you hate in design? What do you hate seeing in design?
For the record, this is all fun. The more nerdy the stuff and the more like cerebral, the more fun I'm having. I guess to some extent, the things that I don't like seeing, well, aside from like the kind of obvious things that I've kind of mentioned, like hyper realism and stuff like that, because I feel like they're just treating me like a dummy,
Yeah.
Like there's a level of just like, is this art treating me like I am the stupidest person ever? And I really dislike that. So I guess there's a level of, hyper realism or polish that it goes to an extent where I'm just like, what am I supposed to like? This doesn't feel like it's offering me any experience, I guess. It's just like, I don't have to fill in any gaps or do anything like that. So I guess levels of information are just such a huge part in what I really don't enjoy. Like, I think anyone that's like started to get more into like reading books or something, they understand how much more powerful and how much more of an experience it is to read a book than to, even watch a movie to some extent, because it's like you just get to fill in so much on your own. You get to be such an active part of the experience you're partaking in. And seeing art that doesn't give you any chance for that feels always like a little bit of a bummer. So my favorite thing to look at is, to go off of that, then opposite side of things, which is like thumbnails and stuff. I love looking at people's thumbnails almost more than finished art most of the time, because it's like I get to kind of experience it through that unfinished lens of like filling in the gaps and kind of feeling like I'm part of the the actual makeup of what this drawing might be. But I don't know, in a more, I guess, silly or generic way, what don't I like? I don't know. I'm not a big fan of stuff that's just like super lewd for the sake of being lewd or anything like that. I've always found that stuff to be just weird to me. But probably just me being slightly weird and autistic about it. But
do you have any tips for just design? People that like maybe get overwhelmed with it, anything?
There's there's so many factors. Obviously it is overwhelming. Like when you think about all the things we talk about, knowledge based, there's so many things you're juggling. You're juggling 1,000 different ratios of 1,000 different things. Everything from like the speed you're drawing at needs to be a ratio, to the level of angles versus curved lines, to, everything related to color and saturation and temperature and all this stuff. And it's a lot. It's a lot to try to juggle, and that's okay. Usually I always recommend people try to focus on singular ideas when they're just trying to get better and build good habits. So you only need to think about like one thing. Maybe it's just like, I'm going to be overly focused on, having big areas of rest and putting all the information into the tiniest like little corner of this design or something like that. And you always kind of want to be thinking about all that stuff, because the more you fixate on an individual aspect, the more likely it is to come out just comfortably while you're juggling 1,000 things. Like, you just won't have to be conscious about it, and then you'll just see that part of it, the area of rest versus detail area, just kind of be better off. But also, if even all of that just feels so overwhelming, I will say there's nothing better for just artists in general than to just do studies of other artists that they like. So there is uh, an amount of people who, once again, will still feel like that just doing a copy, studying another artist, is like not a very productive thing to do for some reason. I don't know. We have a weird, like, kind of mental hang up about just drawing something that someone else has drawn. But it's one of the great ways to internalize a lot of things without knowing you're internalizing them, about like how someone else approaches these ratios, these balances of things, and you're just kind of picking it up without realizing you're picking it up. And before you knew it, if you do enough studies of other artists, it is going to make a huge difference in how your designs look, and you can kind of start shaping what you want your aesthetics to be based on the people you study. But I'm always telling people, I don't think they still never take me seriously enough, but the one way to really get good at art really fast is to have just 3 even parts, doing studies from real things, real life, photos of existing, objects in our reality, doing studies of other artists, and doing stuff from imagination. And all 3 of those evenly, not like, oh, I do 90% of imagination stuff and then like 5% or 8% is from a study from reference, and then like once in a rare while I will draw a study of another artist. Like, I think they really should be evenly balanced. If you just want to get good at design fast, I think that's the best way to do it in my experience. So balance and all that good stuff. And obviously, if you really want to get good at art, you just have to find the right community of people around you as well.
Join Chris. Thank you so much for joining today and having this talk.
Sure. So,
it was really fun.
Yeah, good talking. Maybe see you at Lightbox again.
Hi, I'm Double. I do illustrations, character designs. I'm currently doing art for a RPG game with my friends, and I'm currently working on a manga one-shot. So, doing a lot of things right now.
Oh yeah, make sure to follow him too. You're honestly like an amazing artist. Every time it's glazing out now. Every time I look at your stuff, I'm like, you have a very like good sense of like just style, especially with like how you do anatomy. I think in particular always stands out to me.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like the anatomy of characters, because that's where you can really get a feel for what the character is like. Like, you normally get that from the eyes. Like, the eyes are very expressive, but I'm really interested in drawing the hands as well.
So yeah, the first question is, what is good design for you?
Yeah, so before I answer this question, I just want to mention that I could talk for hours about my personal art taste, but I feel like this kind of question requires a more general answer so that it doesn't exclude too much stuff for no good reason. Now, with that said, a good design to me is very simple. It's a design that manages to achieve its purpose, whatever that purpose may be. So, as long as the design is, 1, faithful to the intent of the artist, and 2, the intent is understood by the viewer, that design is good in my book. It doesn't matter if I dislike it aesthetically or morally or whatever. If the purpose has been achieved, it's a good design, plain and simple. Now, I recognize that this is not a perfect definition, because it does cast a wide net. It doesn't really account for appeal, but I'm doing it on purpose because I don't really believe that design needs to align with my personal taste, or even to interest me to be good.
You brought up something interesting. You said like if the design is like faithful to you. Could you like elaborate? Because I think that's something I sometimes think about too.
Right. So like, imagine when you're doing a design, not just any art, but a design. You're trying to solve a problem. You have an intent. You're trying to show to someone else. It could be anyone. You're trying to show that if the design like fulfills your intent, and if that design's intent is understood by the viewer, then it's a good design. because like there's your intent has successfully been translated into the mind of the viewer.
Yeah.
And to me, that's all a good design is.
This and the next question might be the most difficult questions. And that's simply like, what do you think is engaging design?
So for me, an engaging design, like it's implied in the name, it engages. It's a design that captures and maintains my attention. It forces me to look at it. It could be because its aesthetics are aligned with mine. It could be because it surprises me. It could be the storytelling aspects. It could be a detail in the piece that grabs my attention. It could just be a really good display of fundamentals. I like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
It could be any number of reasons that somehow make me keep looking at that picture. So engaging design generates interest through whatever means you can think of. It's not just fundamentals. It could be like stuff that's unrelated to your intent. So that's why this is the more subjective side of design.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone will have a different view of what is engaging. It's going to be a lot more varied than a more concrete metric like function. So personally, the designs that I find the most engaging are the ones that display strong draftsmanship. I really like draftsmanship. I really like lines and drawing. So if you give me that, I'll be a happy person by default.
Oh yeah.
So like that's my subjective mind speaking. That's my bias. Someone else's bias will be completely different. Like if you're a painter, you're not gonna agree with me, probably. Well, I guess good drawing is goes a long way, but the point is that you'll have a different vision of an engaging design.
I think an interesting question is also like how you would like describe the difference between good and engaging.
Sure. Okay. So, well, first the two are related, and one can work in favor of the other. Like using appeal to strengthen the purpose of the design, or the function of the design itself being a source of appeal. So, for example, found objects. Do you know what found objects are?
Maybe.
So basically, it's like everyday objects that had a specific purpose, and then people started to find like artistic qualities to them. So, for example, the fountain by Marcel Duchamp. The fact that it's a toilet that wasn't meant to be displayed as an art is what made it interesting and worthy of discussion. So that's the kind. So in that sense, the function gave it appeal. Now, with that said, I still think they are different because one fundamentally is about function. I believe that strongly, and the other is appeal. And to illustrate that difference, I'm gonna show you 4 states that a design can exist in. Bear in mind, though, that this is still my own subjectivity talking here. So you have, like in terms of design, you have good but not engaging. For example, a dry architectural blueprint. It gets the information across. It does the job it's supposed to do, but that's pretty much where it ends. Then you have engaging but not good. So the design holds your attention, but it fails to communicate its purpose. This one is a bit trickier, but like one example I can think of is graffiti, like some graffiti. Some graffiti looks really cool, but it's actually unreadable.
Oh yeah.
And now, what matters is the intent, because if the goal wasn't for it to be readable, it doesn't matter. But if it was, then it has unfortunately failed its purpose, which means it's engaging but not good. Then you have neither good nor engaging. Like you don't know what the artist is trying to convey, and you don't feel like looking at the piece. Typically, you see that in like more like student pieces. Like yeah, like you don't see like a strong grasp of the fundamentals, so you don't really get the appeal, and sometimes you don't really know what's going on in the piece itself. It can get a bit messy. Finally, you have good and engaging. That's the fourth one. That's the full package. That's the yin and yang. That's function and appeal working together to produce something great. And I would argue that's what every artist should strive for in their designs, in my opinion.
Okay, let's jump to our next question. This is probably the most fun question. So, what do you like really dislike seeing in design? Like, it can be anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's more like trends, like general trends, and like it's not like I'm gonna hate the artists who do this or anything. It's just like personal pet peeve of mine. But for example, this obsession with the gray gradient background, it needs to stop.
Yeah, I agree.
I cannot bear to look at this ugly gray gradient for every character in prop design. I just can't. Functionality wise, I understand it. You know, it's there to show your subject's values in relation to light and dark, and to give some value contrast. But god damn, it looks horrid to me.
It's just boring.
Yeah, like the practice makes sense, right? There's a pipeline that works. It's just my eyes drift away from the canvas the moment I look at it.
Yeah.
Same thing for pure gray backgrounds. It's just extremely stale to me. I would rather just went with white or black or off-white or even a pure color background. Like even that I'm more okay with. Another pet peeve is artists who think character design is just about big, medium, small, and circle, triangle, square. Like it's such a level 1 character design philosophy.
It is.
Don't get me wrong, it's nice to have like good shape, size distribution, shape commitment, but if that's all you have, I don't really see why I should care about your design besides function. Like, oh, it's a wire, I should make its arms big, its legs small, make it square shaped, right? To make it seem more solid. Or, oh, it's a cute creature, I'm gonna make its eyes big, and I'm gonna make it a circle. Or if it's a villain, I'm gonna make it a triangle. Yes.
Like the last question, which is, like just any tips for aspiring artists or like designers.
Sure. I think that's gonna be a tip for like artists in general, specifically new or intermediate. Like if you're a new or intermediate artist and you feel lost, you don't know where to go in your art journey, this is for you, okay? So I want you to ask yourself some very, very basic questions, like why do you do art? What kind of art do you enjoy? Both as a finished piece and as a process. What subject matters do you like to depict and why? Like these kinds of questions might seem pretty basic, but they are extremely, extremely important ones, because these are the questions that are going to inform every other decision you're going to make for your art. So knowing why you do the things you do is legitimately a cheat code. The quicker you find out what attracts you about making art, the less complications you will face down the line, if you ever want to make a living out of it. Because I see so many artists who get lost in the sauce, endlessly grinding the fundamentals without much direction, because they never thought about these things. And this is where the introspection comes into play, because that's what's going to bring you clarity and hopefully a more concrete goal to achieve. That's I guess one of the tips. Like, just like introspection is really important.
I agree.
I also think it's really important to have a direction towards which you want to take your art, because that direction is going to define not only your art style, but your process in general. Like, very important. If you want to become an animator, your process is going to be very different from the process of a comic artist, for example. And you're gonna have to learn fundamentals, once again, quote unquote fundamentals, that are specific to those medium. So for animations, it's gonna be timing, frame rate, weight, favoring. While for comics, it's gonna be paneling, it's gonna be writing if you're the writer of your comic, page rhythm, word integration, like all that stuff. So like you have to know which fundamentals you're gonna go for, and to know that you have to know like which kind of medium you vibe the most with.
Yeah.
If you're a hobbyist, you don't plan to do this commercially, you're basically free from those constraints. Though I would still argue it's good to be aware of yourself and what you want out of art, because well, your time is limited, and I don't want people to regret their choices. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Real. Yeah, I love those tips.
So this is a cheat code. Being aware of your wants and
Yeah.
like how to solve problems in general, how to go through a difficult situation. All of these will help you not only in art but in life.
Thank you for watching the video. This took really long to make, but I had a lot of fun, and I hope you got to learn something out of it. Let me know if you want to see the full interviews. I unfortunately had to edit them quite a lot, and make sure you tell me if you learned something from this video in the comments down below, or if you want to see me do any other videos, maybe more videos about character design, maybe a specific thing about character design. It could be really anything. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, bye bye. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below, or whatever these YouTubers say. Bye bye.